This lady has got to go. This lady has got to go. You have got to get rid of Stephanie White, man. Stephanie White completely downplaying and trying to dismiss the epic performance in the fourth quarter that Caitlin Clark put on, putting the team on her back, helping almost win again.
That's not internet outrage farming. That's a fan base hitting a breaking point with one of the most baffling post-game performances we've seen from an Indiana Fever head coach this season. And the question tonight isn't whether Stephanie White made a coaching mistake. The question is why she cannot bring herself to say one specific name out loud. Caitlin Clark.
Listen.
I guess just to start out with AV, kind of what happened throughout the game, and is it a re-aggravation of her injury from Unrivaled, and just do you have any information on that?
I don't have any information. I haven't spoken to our medical staff yet.
You never got information. You never know nothing about nothing. I stay in my lane. You'll never know nothing about nothing. Why the hell do they even?
That right there is the entire problem in 12 seconds. A reporter asks a direct question about a possible reactivation of Clark's groin injury, the same one she suffered during Unrivaled in the offseason. This is a routine question. Every head coach in professional sports fields it 100 times a year. The standard response is, I'll get an update from our medical staff and circle back. Instead, you get a flat refusal to engage. No follow-up offered. No reassurance for fans. Just a wall. This is a player whose presence is the reason that press room is full, and the head coach cannot manage 2 sentences about her physical status.
Rally that your team had in the fourth quarter, particularly when it comes to Caitlin. I think she made 5 threes in that fourth quarter, more than her first 2 games combined. So just your thoughts on the resilience from her.
I thought our whole group showed resilience, in that rally. We showed the ability to make tough shots. We had some really good time and score execution moments.
I thought our whole group showed the resiliency and the ability to make tough.
Now listen to that question one more time, because it matters. The reporter is gift wrapping a softball. He is literally counting the threes, 5 of them in the fourth quarter alone, more than the Fever's first 2 games combined. He is begging her to acknowledge what just happened on the floor. And what does she pivot to? Our whole group showed resilience. Caitlin Clark dropped 18 points in the fourth. 18. The rest of the starting lineup combined did not approach that production. This is not sharing credit. This is actively redirecting credit away from the one player who saved the head coach from a much uglier post-game podium. And this pattern, watch carefully here, is not a one-time slip.
Offensively and defensively, in those moments. We just have to have more of it consistently.
Those second and third quarters felt like things kind of slogged for you guys, especially offensively. What was the difference in those 2 quarters?
It was our defense. I mean, we put a lot of pressure on our offense.
The man, I'm telling you, man, you don't see this with winning organizations. They lean into the star. He asked the lady a simple question about.
There it is again. Different reporter, different angle, same evasion. The question is about the slog in the second and third quarters. Quarters in which, for the record, the Fever's offense looked completely disorganized while running half-court sets through Kelsey Mitchell. And the head coach's answer pivots to defense. Defense matters, fine. But this is the 3rd consecutive question where Caitlin Clark's specific fourth-quarter contributions have been minimized or ignored entirely. There is a reporting principle in professional sports media. When a head coach cannot say the star's name, there is a reason. Sometimes it is strategic, sometimes it is territorial, and sometimes, and this is the uncomfortable version, it is resentment. The Indiana fan base has been watching this dynamic build for months, and the patience is gone.
Roster. This front office is a disaster. Amber Cox is a straight up clown. She's a straight up joke. She is a joke of a GM. Amber Cox is horrible. 80% of the league were free agents, and this is the roster you concocted. This is what you came up with. Giving Kelsey Mitchell $1.4 million. Oh, Kelsey Mitchell's the #1 priority last year. She'll be the #1 priority this year. How's that looking for you? The girl hasn't gotten.
This is where the conversation has to expand beyond Stephanie White. Because a head coach can only work with the roster the front office hands her. And the front office in Indiana, that is General Manager Amber Cox and Team President Kelly Krauskopf, made a series of decisions in the offseason that have not aged well. Kelsey Mitchell was retained at roughly $1.4 million, near the top of the non-Supermax pay scale. Mitchell is a scorer. Nobody disputes that. But against Washington, she finished 10 of 25, 40% shooting on 25 attempts. Across her last 2 games, she has registered 0 assists, 0. And the Fever's offensive structure has her isolating out possessions while Caitlin Clark, one of the greatest passers in the history of women's basketball, stands spaced in the corner. When roughly 80% of the WNBA was available in free agency. This is the roster Indiana built around their generational point guard. That is not bad luck. That is a process problem.
How's that 1.4 million going for you? You could have got a bunch of quality players. How's that going for you? How are the 97 guards? You went and drafted a guard in the 3rd round. She didn't make the team. You went and got Raven Johnson. She barely even plays. You went and got Shatori Walker-Kimbrough on the bench. She don't play. You got Ty Harris. You signed her. She can't even bring the ball up the court. Ty Harris can't even bring the ball up the floor, y'all. Aaliyah Boston had to play point.
And the personnel issues compound from there. Sydney Colson was signed as a veteran stabilizer. The stabilizing minutes have not materialized. Ty Harris, and this is a difficult thing to say about any professional player, but the film is the film, has struggled to consistently advance the ball against pressure. So much so that Aaliyah Boston, a 6'4" post, was seen bringing the ball up while Clark was sidelined. That is not a rotation, that is a structural failure. Raven Johnson, drafted out of South Carolina, has played sparingly. Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, a veteran free agent signing, has spent significant minutes glued to the bench. A 3rd-round guard did not even make the final roster. These are not anonymous depth pieces. These are the players Indiana spent their precious roster flexibility on in the most important offseason in franchise history. When the head coach talks about finding combinations, what she is actually doing is trying to assemble a competent rotation from pieces that do not fit together. That is not a coaching solution. That is a roster construction crisis sitting on her desk every morning.
Missing between your best defensive moments and worst?
I think a lot of things. One, intensity. I think attention to detail. It's little things. It's initial positioning. It's communication. It's reacting. It's relaxing off ball. There are a lot of things that are outside of, and great players make great plays. And the thing that Washington does is they keep moving. So your job is not done once your guy gets rid of the ball. And at times we are resting on defense, and we can't afford to do that.
Man, fire this lady, man. She don't know what she doing, man.
Intensity, attention to detail, sensitivity off ball, relaxing off ball. These are coach speak phrases that sound substantive in the moment and reveal almost nothing under examination. Because the real reason the Indiana Fever defense breaks down possession after possession isn't a vague lack of intensity. It is personnel. It is rotations. It is the absence of legitimate perimeter stoppers and the absence of credible rim protection on a roster built without those priorities in mind. Caitlin Clark is not, and has never claimed to be, an elite defender. She is a young guard learning the professional game while carrying the offensive load of an entire franchise on her shoulders. The supporting cast assembled around her does not include the defensive infrastructure that a Clark-centered system requires. And you will never hear that admitted from this podium or this front office. Because admitting it would mean admitting they failed at their single most important job: building a roster that complements a generational talent. Now let's connect everything we just watched, because this is much bigger than one ugly post-game press conference. Caitlin Clark is, statistically and culturally, one of the most valuable assets the WNBA has ever had. Her Fever home games have routinely moved to the larger NBA-sized arena at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Her road games have shattered attendance records in cities that have not sold out a women's basketball game in 2 decades. Television ratings for Indiana Fever broadcasts have averaged numbers that the league has never approached in its prior history. She is, without exaggeration, the foundation of the WNBA's current commercial moment, and the new media rights deal valued at roughly $2.2 billion across 11 years was negotiated in the shadow of her arrival. And the franchise lucky enough to have drafted her, the franchise that won the lottery, has responded by building a roster that does not optimize for her skill set, by hiring a coaching staff that visibly struggles to publicly center her, and by tolerating a front office culture that produces post-game press conferences like the one we just dissected for the last 15 minutes. Think about that contrast. Imagine if the Indiana Pacers had drafted a young Stephen Curry in his prime, and surrounded him with ball-dominant guards who refused to pass, big men who could not set legal screens, and a head coach who refused to mention his name when he dropped 18 in a fourth quarter. That franchise would be ridiculed by every basketball analyst in America. The radio call-in shows would be unbearable. There would be public calls for the general manager's job by the end of the first month. And yet, because this is the WNBA, and because the politics swirling around Caitlin Clark are so charged, the Indiana Fever front office has been allowed to operate with almost no public accountability. The Stephanie White situation specifically is fascinating because she did not arrive in Indianapolis as a controversial hire. She won at the college level at Vanderbilt. She built a respected reputation as an X's and O's coach. Bringing her back to Indiana, where she had previously coached, was not on paper a panic decision. But what we are watching unfold in real time is a basketball philosophy mismatch that is now bleeding directly into the media side of the operation. White appears to favor a deliberate half-court, post-oriented offense built around feeding Aaliyah Boston. Caitlin Clark is a transition magician who needs the ball in her hands 70-plus possessions a game, with elite shooters spaced around her. These two visions are not slightly different. They are in direct conflict. And when the head coach refuses to publicly acknowledge the star's biggest moments, that conflict stops being a theoretical disagreement and starts being a story you cannot stop covering. The defenders of this front office will argue that Caitlin Clark is still a young player. They will say she needs to earn her usage rate. They will say she needs to develop within a team concept. Ordinarily, that argument carries weight. Rookies do need development. Stars do need to earn responsibility. But Caitlin Clark is not an ordinary young player. She entered the WNBA as the all-time NCAA Division I scoring leader, men's or women's basketball. She entered with millions of fans already invested in her career arc. She entered with a national television package that her franchise is directly profiting from week after week. The standard rookie development timetable does not apply here, and pretending otherwise is a form of organizational denial. The deeper question, and this is the one I want everyone watching to sit with, is whether the Indiana Fever organization is actively intentionally slow-walking Caitlin Clark's development for reasons that have very little to do with basketball strategy. Whether internal locker room politics, veteran resentment, or front office anxieties about being seen as the Caitlin Clark team are being allowed to dictate how this generational asset is utilized on the floor and discussed off it. Because if the answer to that question is yes, then we are watching one of the most spectacular instances of organizational malpractice in recent professional sports history, regardless of league. I want to be precise here. I am not accusing Stephanie White of sabotage in any deliberate sense. I am not accusing Amber Cox of incompetence as a personal failing. What I am saying is that the systems currently in place inside the Indiana Fever organization are not maximizing the most valuable basketball player on their roster. They may be doing the opposite. And as fans, as analysts, as people who pay actual money to watch this league grow, we have every right to demand significantly better. So what happens next? The Fever have roughly 30 regular season games remaining. The trade deadline is still months away. In-season coaching changes in the WNBA are historically rare but not impossible. Front office reshuffles typically wait until after the playoff cycle, which means in the short term, Caitlin Clark is going to keep operating inside this exact system. She is going to keep dropping 18-point fourth quarters that her head coach refuses to acknowledge at the podium. She is going to keep playing alongside guards who hunt their own shot first. And the fan base, which is now dramatically larger than the traditional WNBA audience ever was, is going to keep getting louder. My prediction: the pressure on Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf is going to escalate through the summer. If the Fever miss the playoffs, and at their current trajectory that is a realistic outcome, the offseason conversation will not be about whether changes are needed. It will be about how many changes are coming, and how deep they have to cut. Stephanie White's job is more secure than the comment section suggests in the immediate term. But if the public relationship with the franchise's star continues to fracture in front of microphones, that calculus changes very quickly. What I want from you in the comments is this. Watch those clips again. Watch the head coach's body language. Watch what she chooses to say and what she carefully chooses to avoid saying. And then tell me, is this a coach struggling under pressure and saying the wrong things in difficult moments? Or is this a coach who genuinely cannot bring herself to publicly elevate the player who is single-handedly putting the Indiana Fever on the national basketball map? You cannot say both. Pick a side. And if you have made it this far into the video, you already know which side I am leaning toward. Like the video if this analysis hit. Drop your verdict on Stephanie White's tenure in the comments. Subscribe for the deepest WNBA coverage on the internet. Hit the bell so you do not miss the next one, and keep the vision.